Hey everybody, how's it going? Ultimate Kahuna here. Just going to be going through a couple of stories here from a book written by a family friend. Alas, this is from George Kahumoku Jr., A Hawaiian Life. He wrote this book many years ago, and he was a dear friend of the family. Alas, the story I'll be reading today is A Shark Attacks. On a warm, sunny Sunday, a couple of days before Christmas, I was out in the sea in an outrigger canoe, a mile off the coast of Kona on the big island of Hawaii. Just a few months before, I was flying over the same ocean at 600 miles per hour, returning home after several years of college on the mainland. During those years, I had felt so separated from my home and culture, but on this day, I would be living on the life of my ancestors had lived for generation after generation, fishing in the waters around the island. Softly, perfumed breeze of the trade winds and the ocean swells lapping quietly against the boat felt comfortable and familiar. Yet, after years in the big mainland city, it was kind of an adventure too. This adventure actually began the day before. I was wrapping up class at the school where I taught. The classroom, on the side of a volcano surrounded by palm and guava trees, was decorated with the usual Christmas stuff: pictures of sleighs, cardboard snowmen, paper icicles, snowflakes cut out of folded paper. I hoped Santa wouldn't be expecting chimneys here, or we are in big trouble. Late in the day, I saw my 15-year-old nephew, Sweetie, hanging out just outside the classroom. He was acting so nervous. You couldn't help but notice him. Finally, the bell rang. He waited for the classroom to empty before he came in. It wasn't like Sweetie to be anywhere near school when he didn't have to have class, and I wondered what was up. Aloha, Uncle. Hey, Sweetie, how's it? He made one final check around the room to make sure we had privacy. You still got some opelu? The opelu is a type of mackerel, very tasty. A few weeks before, we'd had a good run on them. I'd saved a few dozen frozen in seawater in milk cartons. Sometimes during the winter months when opelu was scarce, it was handy to have some available for bait. Sweetie was about the only person who knew I had them. Yeah, I still got some. Why? Sweetie took a long, careful look over each shoulder before stepping closer and confiding, Ahi, the magic word. When the ahi, the yellowfin tuna, were running, you had a chance to make some real money. I had been paying attention to prices lately, but Sweetie, like me, came from a long line of fishermen, and he stayed on top of stuff like this. How much are they going for? I whispered. Now I was part of the conspiracy. Sweetie checked the room again before showing me three extended fingers. He grinned at my surprised reaction. I began to slip from the textbook English of a schoolteacher and back into my native pidgin. Holy shit! $3 1 pound? Michielani when catch one 80-pound poda yesterday. How you know this? Already seen it. He went see Mitchie bring the canoe in. Arle was Sweetie's little brother. He was only 9 years old, but a very reliable source of information. Somebody else when somebody else went see him. Nah, just some guys down there. Mitchie said he never catch nothing, but Arlie think he catch kind of funny kinne. So that boga stick around when everybody went go. He went go climb the coconut tree and go hide on top of that tree. Mitchie went go back home to canoe. He went take one ahi, put the boga inside his truck, take off. Arlie was seeing the whole thing. You don't put anything over on Arlie. So when the ahi were running, and I had the bait. Sweetie, you got some hooks, brah? No, brah. This was a problem. I knew I had two, maybe three hooks. Hell, if we started buying or worse, borrowing huge number 11 ahi hooks, The word would be all over Kalea in hours. Then we would have 50 other canoes out there trying to catch ahi. It may be the big island, but it's a small world here when it comes to stories about an ahi run. Sweetie and I decided we would have to go with whatever we had. We agreed to meet early the next morning at the beach. I'd supply the bait and tackle and an outboard motor, and Sweetie would arrange for a canoe. Just before dawn the next morning, Sweetie and I were driving in my ancient Jeep Wagoneer along the road to a beach near Kilea. We were looking for Arlie. Arlie was out looking for rocks. He seemed to have gotten lost. I hated driving around like this because my clutch was slipping pretty bad. Parts are expensive in the islands, and I was putting off repairs until I had a few extra bucks. Finally, my headlights picked him walking along the edge of the road. A skinny kid in well-worn swim shorts, no shirt, no shoes. He was carrying an old plastic spackle bucket. I saw him bend over to pick up a rock, look at it carefully, and toss it away. No wonder it was taking him so long to collect that bucket of rocks. I pulled the truck up next to him. "Hey, what you get?" I said, and opened the door for him. He held up the bucket for me to see what was inside. 3 dozen or so baseball-sized rocks. "Yeah, that's the stuff," I told him. He put the bucket in the back of the truck and climbed in. I put the Jeep in gear with a grinding crunch, and we headed down to the beach. "Hey, Harley, the ahi are going for $3 a pound." "Yeah?" "How much for one fish weigh 80 pounds? A question from Mr. Kahumoku, high school teacher. Harley worked the problem in his head, then looked at me in astonishment. "That's $240. "Smart kid. For one fish?" he asked. "For one fish." "Shit, drive faster, uncle." I laughed. "Gotta catch him first. Kids thinks it's so simple." But it was a chance to pick up on my one day off, maybe a couple months of teacher salary for me, and a year's pay for Sweetie. We drove down the beach where the canoe was supposed to be. Sweetie's dad, Uncle Polly, was always bragging about his wonderful canoe. But a couple of people had told me to look for a canoe with the ugliest paint job ever seen on a boat of any size. I laughed at the time, but it was no damn joke. The thing was painted a bright, horrible orange color, and it would have been so bad if the paint had been some kind of ugly fluorescent to it. Holly had painted it a year ago using some marine paint he got on a closeout at Sears. No wonder he got it cheap. The ama, the outrigger, was all waterlogged and busted up. He held together with baling wire, old hand line, and enough duct tape to keep the Titanic afloat. "That's it," Sweetie said. "What kind of canoe is this?" "Oh, that one ugly bugger," I said. He couldn't really disagree. It kind of took our breath away. We shut down the truck and got out and walked over to the thing. "You sure that bugger not going to sink?" I said. "Nah, Pop said she no leak." Some people think it's kind of risky going after large game fish in deep water with hand lines in a 24-foot boat. Even with the equipment in top condition, with this canoe beneath us, we really would be letting it all hang out. But the sun was coming up, and there wasn't much choice at this point. So the 3 of us loaded our gear into the canoe and launched into the surf. Arlie would be staying behind. About an hour later, maybe a half mile off the shore, propelled by my dad's 25-foot horse, Evan rowed out outboard. The sea was calm, and the green-blue water was crystal clear. The canoe sat low in the water, weighted down with ice coolers, bait box, and a couple pails of rocks, plus 2 large guys and an outboard engine. Sweetie and I got busy setting up our fishing tackle. First, I grabbed 1 copy of Opelu Baitfish and put it on the blade of my paddle. which I laid across the gunwales to use as a cutting board. I cut the opelu in half, slicing the fish right up the middle. One half I ran into pieces. I picked up a rock from the bucket and used the other half of the opelu to wrap both the rock and the cut up pieces of fish. I embedded huge 3-inch ahi hook tied to the end of my line onto the large piece of opelu. I tied a slip knot with the line around the whole thing. Sweetie rigged up his the same way. We had done this before, and it was fast and easy work for us. I picked up the 400-pound test line. It's made up of several fibers woven together. With small lengths of string, we stuck it through it every 6 feet, each string marking a fathom. We measured this by stretching out a length of line overhead with our arms widespread. That's a fathom. We'd be fishing down there 100 to 200 feet. Don't forget, we only got 3 hooks, so don't spoil them, I reminded Sweetie. 3 should be enough if we just play them nice and easy. I picked up my tackle and dropped it carefully over the side. The rock is a weight. The ahi is a deep water fish. You need to get down at least 40 fathoms to where he lives. When you know the bait down there and where the ahi are, you give your line a jerk. The line knot opens and the chum falls into the water. This attracts the ahi, the other half of the opelu, when the hook is embedded. Now all we had to do was wait. I got a soda from the cooler, lay back in the canoe. I had one leg dangling over the side, and I draped my line over the akau. The akau is the place that attaches the outrigger to the canoe. I let the line run over the palm of my left hand. When I had a bite, I was going to know about it right away. It was warm and relaxed feeling. Sweetie sat bolt upright at his end of the canoe, trying not to doze off, a loose grip on his line. After a half hour or so, he suddenly jerked awake. Uncle! I sat up quickly. Sweetie's line was running through his fingers, and it startled him. Okay, now give him some. Before I could say anything, Sweetie jerked up on the line, and that was that. The line went slack, and the fish and one of our precious hooks were gone. You ought to give him slack, brah. I was trying not to yell at him. I had a lot more to say than that, but suddenly my own line started to run. I let the fish take a little. The depth of the bait and the strength of the pull of the line told me it was a nice-sized ahi. Hey there, animation overload. It's going good, man. How's the stream sound? This is my first stream, and you're my first commenter on one of my own streams, so I'm going to give you a good old woo. Gotta set this right. Woo! Ow! How is that, my friend? Anyway, how you doing, man? Anyway, thanks for hanging, brother. I'll get back to the story. That one's a big bug at that fish, Sweetie said. That's not one fish. Looks like one fish to me. Looked like one new clutch to me. Sweetie laughed. You're right. I look like one big Christmas party for me and my friends. Medekilikimaka, uncle. It was that time to get back to work. Okay, put the line back in the water. We got to catch some more fish. We were in high spirits as we started to re-rig our lines. It was going to be a good day. It was just past noon when we got back to the beach. We probably looked more like a maritime disaster than a floating canoe. We were sitting so low in the water, the Yakao was nearly awash as we made our way through the tricky shore break. Sweetie and I were singing at the top of our lungs Christmas carols and old Hawaiian songs. Sweetie didn't know many of the Hawaiian words, so we filled in the blanks with gibberish and laughter. When we got close to the beach, he gunned down the engine and we ran the canoe up on the sand. I was glad to see a bunch of my young nephews and cousins were waiting for us. Arlie had done his job, as usual. They ran over to give us a hand pulling the canoe up on the beach. Holy shit, Uncle. Damn, said another kid. 7 to 120-pound ahi packed in ice in a 24-foot canoe is an impressive sight. Sweetie and I climbed out as the boys all gathered around to see what we brought in. We're going to make one big Christmas party, and all the guys in Kona are going to come, Sweetie announced. The young men whooped it up, slapping their new hero Sweetie on the back. I guess he was as proud as he'd ever been in his life. But as we had to get the ahi into fresh ice for the trip to the Susan fish auction on the other side of the island, I reached into the canoe and hauled out a huge fish, picking it up by the tail and pulling it over my shoulder. We're not going to have one party if the fish don't get the hilo. Sweetie, a big grin on his face, leaned casually against the palm tree and let the others carry the fish to my cousin's truck. I grabbed our empty ice coolers and hauled them over to the trucks. I started loading the coolers with fresh ice, and I called to Sweetie, "Hey, no, only stand around. Give me a hand." Sweetie came over and helped me carry the coolers. We set off in the direction of the canoe. "Where are we going with this?" he asked me. "Gotta load up for the next trip," I told him. This stopped Sweetie in his tracks. "Next trip? The fish is still biting out there. We gotta get to some more fish before everyone else finds out." Obviously, it never occurred to him that we would be going out again. He was ready to spend the rest of the afternoon telling his cousins big game fishing stories and planning his next blowout of a party. Lapoka saw I was loading up the canoe. "What, you guys going out one more time?" he asked. "Plenty of fish still out there," I said. "You should get plenty fish blood in that canoe. Shark's gonna come." "Sharks, Uncle?" Sweetie said. Dakine, Liko. He went come back 1 hour ago. He seen some sharks, for sure. He not going out again. Sharks are Akamura. They are a guardian angel, bruh. No need to worry about them, I said. Sweetie looking doubtful, so I tried another tact. Hey, Sweetie and me, we're not afraid of some sharks, right, Sweetie? As the reigning hero, Sweetie had to go along. Shit, no. Sharks no scares us. He called out to the others, those less daring than us. Hey, give us a hand with this canoe. We go on back out for some more. With that bit of bravado, we launched our boat into the surf. By mid-afternoon, the canoe was very low in the water again, with 2 100-pound ahi in ice. I was napping and Sweetie was sulking. I think it had finally hit him that I tricked him into this second trip. We had one line in the water. We need some more fish, I pointed to our catch. See that big bugger over there? That's my wife's new 4-piece bedroom set. Queen bed, headboard, 6-drawer bureau, mirror, and that other fish, just a smaller. That's her new TV with remote control. And this other one, I wiggled my hand line. This one is new Guild 12-string guitar. That's for me. We get this one, then we go home, okay? What if we don't get another one? We no bite in over an hour. Suppose. Our conversation was interrupted by a welcome tug on my line, the unmistakable feel of good-sized ahi. Guitar calling me, I said. For a couple of minutes, I worked the fish, the line wrapped around my hand. This guy was putting up a struggle, and it was my last hook. I had to be careful not to lose it or the fish. Then wham! There was a huge yank on the line that nearly catapulted me over the bow of the canoe. Sweetie laughed. I was thinking I was clowning around again. I quickly wrapped the line around the Iyako on the bow. and was nearly pulled into the sea, almost to the waterline. Sweetie sobered up quickly. What the hell was that? He wanted to know. I was wondering the same thing myself. Now I could see the canoe was moving. We were being pulled forward. Start the engine, I yelled at Sweetie. Sweetie gave the starter rope another pull, and nothing happened. He gave it another yank, and the old motor sputtered to life. Reverse, put him in reverse, I shouted. Sweetie put it into reverse and opened the throttle. But all this was lower the bow down further. The seawater started to pour in over the sides of our canoe. We were on the verge of sinking in dangerous waters over a mile from the shore. No, kill him, I yelled. Sweetie shut down the engine. The canoe stabilized. We had taken on a lot of water, and we had a couple of empty plastic syrup containers with a rope attached to the handle so we could use it to scoop out the water. We immediately grabbed these and started to bail. Glancing behind us, I could see there was a wake behind our canoe. We were clearly being pulled forward and at a pretty good speed. What the hell is that? Sweetie's face had gone pale with fear. There you go, brother. Ain't no sardine. Swallow that out, whole, bruh, I said, chuckling with more courage than I really felt. Sweetie peered down into the ocean in front of the boat. Suddenly, he pointed downwards into the deep. Look! I looked down into the water where a tiny gray fish was swimming just ahead of our canoe. But our fishing line was extended all the way from the boat to this minnow. It was a trick of perspective. The minnow was a huge shark, deep in clear blue water, pulling us along. It's one shark. Cut the line, Sweetie yelled. That's the last hook. Please, Uncle. You're so Papa Kiki. Cut the line. Let's get out of here. Papa Kiki. Stubborn. Yeah, I guess that's me. But this fish was making me angry. He's not getting my last damn hook. He's taking us away from land. I took my bearings. Sure enough, we were being pulled away from the island. I reached down into the canoe and came up with my handmade gaff. I hefted it. What are you doing with that? Wait for him to get tired, then we whack him on the head when he come up. Sweetie looked at me in disbelief. Okay, maybe I wasn't being smart about this. What's up, man? To get to the guitar, I needed my hook. All I had to do was get it out of the mouth of this large shark down below us. I settled back into the seat with the gaff in my lap. I knew this was going to take some time. 30 minutes turned into an hour. And then another hour passed. The canoe was still being pulled along by the shark. The island shore was receding in the distance now, and the sun was much lower on the horizon. I sat with the gaff at the ready. Sweetie was trying a new tactic, staring me down. It wasn't working. You pupule, bruh, he finally said. I'm not crazy, though. That damn fish was not going to get my last damned hook. We kept moving south. I decided to tell Sweetie a reassuring story. I asked him if he remembered my tutu koko, my father's grandmother. She's pupulele too, he let me know. I used to think so. So I told Sweetie my story. When I was a little guy, maybe 3 or 4 years old, my tutu used to take me down to the sea once a month or so on the lava rocks near Ka'elea. He would pick up a couple of large stones and bang them together over and over again. Eventually, a huge dark shadow would appear in the water, a big shark, and she would start feeding him. She brought whatever she had to give him, usually opelu, but sometimes taro, sometimes ulu, cooked breadfruit, whatever she had on the stove in our cookhouse. She'd smile at the shark and chuckle to herself while she tossed the food out to him. He would swallow the food whole and swim in circles looking for more. She always would remind me that this was the grandpa shark, one with all the whiskers. When I was a kid, I didn't know any better. I never heard of a shark with whiskers, and I wanted badly to see one. The shark would pass after pass until the food was gone. She'd promise him she would come back soon. She would wave goodbye to the shark and make me do the same. Then she would take my hand and lead me down on the narrow path back to the cliff. Later, when I was older and taking a cue from my older brother, I would just laugh at her when she went off to feed Grandpa. But I really missed those trips to feed him. Sweetie was listening intently. So because I went and make fun of her, she never take me feed the shark again. How come she feeds sharks? I always used to think about that. I never found out for a long time. From Uncle Kamuluya. You remember him? Yeah, he had white hair and one cane. I remember. Uncle Kamuela. When tell me that Tutu Kokos was a young kid, she won Pupule Boga. I believe that. I told Sweetie the rest of the story. My uncle told me that back in the 1920s, when Tutu was around 16, she had been with the family gathering OPE, a small limpet that clings to rocks above the sea. You only get them on big wave surf days, 15 or 20-foot surf, when the OPE would climb out of the water to get a little higher. Anybody else would wait for a smaller surf day and gather the OPE when it was safe. But before they moved back or down the cliff, not my Tutu, she couldn't wait. She had invented her own system using a couple of 30-foot bamboo sticks. On one of the poles, she had a small net attached to the end. The other one put a putty knife tied to the other end of it. Hanging off over the cliff, she would pry the OPE loose with a knife on the one pole and then flip them into the net on the other. She was leaning dangerously close to the pounding surf as she worked. Her mother called out to her to make her stop, but Tutu had to have those yellows. A stubborn young woman. Nobody saw her fall except her little brother. One moment she was there, reaching down over the cliff, and the next she was gone. Sister went and fell on the rocks, was all little Paloa could say. She must have hit her head and been knocked unconscious because she wasn't seen again. Some of the braver young men climbed down towards the waters to try to recover her body, but it was too dangerous with the big surf. Their families pleaded with them to come back to higher ground. That night, she was mourned with the old Hawaiian chants, her grieving family, with a vigil by torchlight atop the cliff. If she was still alive, the torches would be sort of a lighthouse to guide her home. If she was dead, they would be a beacon for her pet spirit to see. They didn't return to the house until after dawn. Tutu's mother went in first. A moment later, everyone heard a shocked cry from within the house. They rushed inside to find an impossible sight. There was Tutu, lying in her bed. She had a huge mark, undoubtedly from the fall into the rocks. From the left side of her face, all the way down to her knee, was a kind of big red birthmark. Still disbelieving her own eyes, her mother gently touched her daughter, and Tutu opened her eyes. She was alive. It was a miracle. How did she get here? Had she not fallen after all? No, she said. She fell into the water, and a shark, a grandpa shark with whiskers, carried her to the beach a couple miles away. So she swam ashore and walked home. No one was there. Exhausted, she fell asleep. Auntie wanted to clean her wounds, but Tutu wouldn't let her, insisting that these were marks of honor not caused by the rocks, but by a slap from the shark, the grandpa shark. It became the standard family joke. From then on, Tutu went where her shark and wore her shark scar proudly. She began feeding sharks, and from that day until the end of her life more than 70 years later. So now you know, I told Sweetie. Sharks are good look for us. She almost seemed convinced, but it was sunset, and we were now miles from home. The wind and current were against us. He's coming up, I said. I stood up in the canoe and braced myself, holding onto the gaff head high over my head. My mouth was a little dry. Maybe this hadn't been such a good plan. But even cutting the line wasn't going to help us now. Still, I was determined. If there was a chance to nail this guy and get my hook back, I must have appeared just a bit crazed, poised there, silhouetted against the setting sun, with this ridiculous-looking weapon held overhead. Sweetie was looking at me like I was a madman. And suddenly, he was there, right next to the canoe. He wasn't the biggest shark in the sea. He was much smaller than our 24-foot canoe. He was not much smaller than our 24-foot canoe. He rolled his eyes back, as sharks do to protect their eyes before they attack. I could see the whites of his eyes rolled back. I knew he was getting ready to eat. His dorsal fin stood a good 3 feet out of the water. To our canoe's 12 inches, I was ready to bring my club down on his head. I waited for the perfect position for my blow, and that's when I saw the whiskers. The shark had a beard, but no, it wasn't beard. It was dozens, maybe hundreds of fishing lines and streams of seaweed coming out of his jaws and mouth. It was only a moment, but I saw clearly. See lines made of sea net, the old coconut fiber used by Hawaiian fishermen many years ago. For an instant, I flashed back to the time with my tutu, feeding the sharks in Ka'alia. Distracted by the memory, I hesitated an instant too long, and my opportunity was lost. It was all the time the shark needed to get himself under the canoe, his huge body rocking the boat. Sweetie had a death grip on the iakau. His face was a mask of pure terror. The outrigger started to overturn. Unable to keep my balance, I fell towards the shark, turning in midair and exposing the left side of my body to the shark. If I fell into the sea, I knew I was a dead man. But then his tail came up, and he slapped me hard from head to foot with his rough barnacled body, knocking me back into the canoe. A quick fluid motion. He turned and dove deep, snapping the line at last, leaving Sweetie and me to bob along far out to sea at sunset in our tiny craft. 6 hours later, a little past midnight, the ice had melted long ago. Our catch was spoiled. My left side was bruised and swollen from the shark's rough slaps. The scars, which I will bear the rest of my life. Sweetie hadn't spoken a word to me the entire time. He would never go fishing with me again. I am a modern American who has flown high over the ocean at nearly the speed of sound. And I am an ancient Hawaiian who travels slowly and low in the sea, not even as high as a shark's fin. I am contemporary Western man as surely as I am old Tutu. I am stubborn and reckless as she was, and I have seen things she has seen. And my connection to the lives of my ancestors is cemented further, as it has ever been over and over again during the course of my life. This happened in December 1976. Oh, alrighty then. So, this is a story by George Kahumoku, talking about a fishing experience and some old family tales of his that have gone down through the generations. And what I can say about George is this. He hasn't talked about this so much in his book so far, but he is a tremendous guitar player, one of the best in the world. He taught himself how to play, and because of all his pigs at the pig farm who would scream in his ear, he lost most of his hearing along the way somewhere. So he would, as he's playing the guitar, he would tune the guitar by feel and by sight instead of by sound. And even without his hearing, he's still one of the best players in the world. He does have a small tendency to exaggerate, but the essence of all of his stories are true, and I've confirmed them with other family members and such. So, Animation Overload, thanks for tuning in. Sorry if the reading was a little bit rough. This is just something I'm giving a shot, and I really appreciate you stopping by, man. Thanks for coming by. All right, guys, this is the ultimate Kahuna signing out, and I'm going to give you guys a woo for the ages. Woo! Ow! Peace in, man. All right, Evelyn. Well, I'm going to be turning that off now, but thanks for stopping by, brother. I really appreciate it. Woo! Signing off.